You all know Clearwater as one of the top beach destinations in the world, but did you know it has a haunted past? Today we are with the Jolley Trolley, with Mike here at the Jolley Trolley, and we are getting ready to go on the brand new Crabby's Northside Tour. Mike, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for absolutely being here and actually putting yourselves here tonight in a supernatural, paranormal activity that is about to happen.
Absolutely. So what, Mike, can you tell us about this new Northside Tour?
Well, today's going to be the great launch of it. If it's anything like the South Tour was, the South Tour started to develop as it went on, and we got into some really unique areas here, in places from continuously going every night to, even as I was telling you, sharing the story here, is our driver who you're going to meet in a little bit, bringing a ghost home with him that particular evening. This tour, though, this one takes a whole nother look at Clearwater. This one, matter of fact, for everybody that lives in Florida, want to hear where even the things like Spanish moss began. And one of the oldest gangster kind of hangouts here of all time in a speakeasy located at the Fenway Hotel, used by the Stevenson's Creek.
Wow.
Pirates of the days. And we're going to explain all of that on the tour.
So Mike, if people want to get on this tour, where can they go?
Well, there's actually two starting points we have set up because we know how traffic and parking can be an issue out here. So the great news is we have one of the finest restaurants in all of Florida as our partner here, called Crabby's.
Nice.
And everybody pretty much knows them. They got the best location in the beach. They are right across from Pier 60, and they have a parking lot that if you were to stop there, they will give you a rum punch bucket here just for coming on the tour, and also a 4-digit code that you're going to put into that parking meter. And that's going to allow you to go ahead and enjoy this for like $1 an hour here for the parking. Otherwise, if parking's not available and you want to go to a different area that's more convenient, not have to worry of any of the traffic, we have 112 South Osceola. And actually, if you got on the other tour, you'd hear about how dangerous of a man that Osceola once was.
Oh, okay. If you guys want to learn more about these tours, go to hauntedclearwater.com.
Did a sudden chill rush over your shoulder? Is that a child laughing in the last row? Or are you experiencing something or someone attempting to reach you from beyond the physical world? On any given tour, you may have none, some, or all of these experiences, or something else entirely. Be sure to pay close attention to your surroundings.
Welcome everyone to the Haunted Clearwater North Tour. I'm author Josh Ginsberg, and I'm so glad you've chosen to join us this evening aboard the Jolley Trolley. Take a moment to locate the booklet which allows you to follow along as my friends and I summon forth tales true and terrifying for you. Most of these stories are based on historical information and first-hand accounts. A few, however, are my own creative conjurations. Think you can separate fact from fiction like flesh from bone? Listen carefully, and we'll see how well you did when we reach our final destination. Don't be fooled by the Jolley in the trolley's name. While our group here might be warm and jovial, some of those spirits we'll talk about, and perhaps encounter, will be considerably less so. Now prepare yourself as we part the veil between this world and the next.
The Playhouse was established originally in 1930 at the Clearwater High School before moving to its own location in 1935. According to many who have spent time there, it isn't just the actors who part a curtain to cross between worlds. Apparently, they share the stage with the spirits. The following ghostly encounters were related to us by the artistic director Jason Forsman. Over the decades, many have described paranormal experiences while performing in a show, in rehearsal, or in the quiet after hours. Actors refer to this ghostly presence as Frankie. Since then, there have been numerous reports of slamming doors, flying objects, cold, chilly spots in rooms, and mysterious sounds. One night, during a show, the lighting crew found themselves locked out of the tech booth, even though the only lock on the door was a hook and eye latch. In order to finish the performance that evening, they had to crawl into the room from the back row of seats through the high window. The chances of the hook and eye mechanism ever latching itself must be greater than 10,000 to 1. Other times, items in the tech booth have had to be bolted down to prevent them from flying across the room of their own accord. A small fan was twice seen to fly in an arc into the air before crashing to the ground with a loud thud. Things like props, car keys, and wallets regularly disappear, only to reappear mysteriously. Doors unlock and lights flash on their own at times, even when devoid of a power source. One of the current actors at the theater has the uncanny ability to see the dead and has determined that the Francis Wilson Playhouse is home to no less than 5 different ghosts. They appear to enjoy observing all that happens on and off the stage. One of these is the ghost of a young boy. While he likes to play tricks from time to time, he's generally well behaved. Sometimes he appears as a floating head, just for fun. Another appears to be a man getting into a beaded gown costume in the offstage dressing rooms. 2 spirits appear off the left side of the stage in the seats as if they are watching the show. They exude a soft glow as they whisper quietly to each other. Both are of average height and build, but beyond that, little is known about these otherworldly patrons. Pinellas County has a long history of ghost stories and tales of the supernatural. It also has a long history of baseball. Here, those 2 histories intersect at Jack Russell Memorial Stadium, which is said to be haunted by more than just the ghost of games past. If you are following along in your flip book, you will find an image of the stadium when it first opened in 1955. For nearly 50 years, it served as the spring training home of the Philadelphia Phillies. Prior to that, it was called the Brooklyn Field. The Brooklyn Dodgers, Newark Bears that later became affiliated with the Yankees, and the Florida State Negro League's Clearwater Black Sox all played games on the field. Jack Russell, for whom the stadium was eventually named, was a pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, Cleveland Indians, Chicago Cubs, St. Louis Cardinals, and other teams before settling in Clearwater after finishing his career in 1940. Russell became Clearwater's city commissioner and founded Jack Russell Oil Company before passing away in 1990. In 2004, the Phillies played their last game here before moving to what is now known as Baycare Ballpark, but apparently, not everyone was ready to leave. More than a few of those who worked in the stadium recall hearing the sounds of running between the bases and of bats hitting baseballs late at night when the field was empty. Others have heard music emanating from somewhere in the vast darkness of the unlit stadium.
We're taught in school as children to regard adult strangers with caution. But what if it's the adults that should be more concerned about a strange child? Such seems to be the case with the most commonly encountered spirit here. That of a frail-looking 6-year-old girl. She twirls locks of her pale blonde hair between her even paler fingers as she calls out for playmates that have long since departed. Her origins are unknown. She seems too young to have attended school here. Perhaps she was abandoned by a sibling or parent who never returned for her. She interacts from time to time with ghost hunters and others, asking to play. Over the years, though, her loneliness seems to have become more malevolent. Her icy touch is rumored to send paralyzing chills through the body of those who have the misfortune to meet her. Some speculate that she's seeking a surrogate guardian or parent to share eternity with. Others suspect that she is not, and never was, human to begin with, but rather some demonic entity gathering souls.
As we pull into this small lot, you will see an unassuming and fruitful community garden. Just beyond the greenery, you will find an open field and a basketball court that was once a community pool, used for decades when the old Pinellas High School was open. You will find images of the school as a functioning learning institution in your booklet. But in March of 2020, archaeologists using ground-penetrating radar detected 44 graves from an African-American cemetery. Listen carefully as the local CBS affiliate 10 Tampa Bay reports on the situation.
In the 1950s, the Clearwater city manager and all the graves from the city-owned African-American cemetery had been moved for redevelopment. Today we learned that was not the case at all. Archaeologists confirmed 44 graves from the North Greenwood Cemetery at Holt and Ingman are still on property belonging to the city and Pinellas County schools.
Archaeologists, they found 445 graves in 2 other black cemeteries in Tampa, and now the work starts to figure out what's next for the North Greenwood community in Clearwater. The 44 graves from this cemetery were ones that a funeral home never moved after the city and the school district swapped land to make room for a segregated swimming pool in 1954. The city insisted the move was complete and moved on, but the community knew differently. Now that the information is out there and the truth is out there, the city and the NAACP says it's time to take the next archaeological steps so this community can heal.
Actions we take in the past come back to revisit us, and mistakes that we may have made in the past, we have to address their impacts today.
The city will now have archaeologists do ground truthing, which means digging to confirm the presence of graves. This does not mean exhuming bodies. The city says it will also be working very closely with the NAACP and the community to make sure the souls laid to rest are respected and properly honored.
Sadly, this very road we're on now likely takes us over countless unknown and unnamed human remains. There is no doubt that the people buried here have faced unnecessary unrest, so it's no wonder that Greenwood community neighbors have reported seeing strange, ghostly figures just beyond the fence. With so much activity in the field, it begs the question, is the fence there to keep us out or the spirits in? We will now depart slowly so you can take a picture. as previous tour guests have captured unexplained images within photos captured here. Up ahead, we will be crossing over Stevenson's Creek. During Prohibition, this became a popular spot to pick up and drop off moonshine. If you reference your guide, you will see images from the time. The moonshiners would leave bottles of their homemade booze in the shallow water. Their customers would pull up the bottles, and if anyone asked, they would say they had just been out fishing. But things didn't always go so smoothly, as this next tale illustrates. I should start by mentioning that the story comes to us third-hand through a not altogether reliable source, a strange local character who agreed to meet with us at a local pub to share his tale. We thought it strange that when we met it was midsummer and he was wearing gloves, but we decided not to ask about it. After he'd had a taste of whiskey, he told me about two brothers, Frank and Charles, who were in the habit of picking up their weekly supply of moonshine from the creek. One night, they'd told their families they were going fishing, which wasn't unusual. By the time they got to the creek, they'd finished off the last of their weekly drinks and were a bit drunk. They fished around for their respective goods, but they only found one batch when there were supposed to be two. They kept searching around in the dark water but didn't find any other bottles. Drunk, drenched, and frustrated, they turned on one another, each accusing the other of having snatched the bottles earlier in the day. Heated words turned to fists, and Frank, without thinking, drew his hunting knife and planted it up to the hilt right in his brother's chest. Charlie staggered backward and tried to let out a howl of pain and confusion, but he was already choking on his own blood. He fell forwards with a splash, the water around him stained red under the moonlight. Frank was horrified by what he'd done, but he didn't know what to do, so he dug a shallow grave in the soft, wet earth alongside the creek and buried Charlie there. If his family was curious as to why Frank was covered in mud and white as a sheet when he came home, they said nothing. But late that night, they were awakened by a pounding at the door. When Frank went down to open the door, no one was there. Just a pair of muddy shoe prints and an empty bottle. This happened each night until Frank returned to Stevenson's Creek. Using an empty bottle his brother had left, he measured out 3 fingers of moonshine and poured it into the dark water. This seemed to appease Charlie as he stopped banging on his brother's door. It became a custom that anyone who pulled something from the creek, be it fish or bottles, should leave 3 fingers of alcohol for Charlie.
As you look out the windows on the way to our next stop, you'll no doubt notice the Spanish moss that hangs from all the trees like a curse. And according to legend, a curse is exactly what it is. The very first Europeans who came to explore the New World landed not far from here. They were led by Panfilo de Narvaez, who was as vicious and bloodthirsty a conquistador as ever there was. Not a nice guy. You can tell from the vexed look on his face in the portrayal of him in your booklet. He and his men were so consumed by their lust for gold that it ultimately led to their own demise as they made their way deeper inland, torturing the local Tocobaga and other indigenous people they encountered, convinced that they were withholding some vast fortune. The legacy they left behind wasn't measured in gold. they never found any real treasure, but in the cruelty and suffering they inflicted. There's a legend from these times that one of Narvaez's men came upon a small piece of gold. When he held it up to inspect it, it shimmered in the sunlight, and a bird overhead thought it was a fish. So it swooped down, snatched it, and flew up into a tree. The conquistador was so angry that he climbed right up after it. The bird flew up higher, and the conquistador went higher too. Near the top of the tree, the bird flew out onto the end of a branch with that gold still in its beak, and the conquistador edged out towards it. But as he drew his sword, he lost his footing and fell. The branches snapped his neck, and his body lodged there in the tree. But the story doesn't end there. You see, he had a gray beard that continued to grow, even as the elements and the scavengers picked his bones clean from his skeletal remains. That beard kept growing until it had covered the branch, and then the tree, and then the other trees around it. Today, that long dead conquistador's beard is still growing from the trees as Spanish moss that hangs over every place here in Florida that was poisoned by the greed of Narvaez's men.
We are here with Rochelle. What was your favorite experience here on the tour?
I think besides just learning about all the history of the area, I really enjoyed that. My favorite story was about the Spanish moss and why we have so much Spanish moss here in Florida, and about a guy who climbed a tree and he wanted to get some gold from a bird, and that I thought that was pretty cool. But that's the reason why we have Spanish moss today, is because of his fatality in that tree. So
all right.
This cemetery was also once the location of the historic Andrews Memorial Chapel, one of the oldest buildings in the area and the subject of many strange and unsettling tales. The church was originally constructed in the late 1800s and stood here on this very site. It was renamed when the Andrews family paid $200 to have it changed to memorialize the 25-year-old William Andrews, who was killed while riding a horse in a violent storm. His father, Alan Andrews, was a devout and God-fearing Christian, carving out a new life for himself, his wife, and his 2 boys. There are many different accounts and tales of what befell him and his family. What follows is just one version. Listen closely to the cursed Andrews family story as we depart the cemetery.
There's something powerfully enticing about all of the historic old hotels throughout Pinellas County and the greater Tampa Bay area. Such is their allure that they draw visitors not just from beyond the Gulf Coast, but from beyond the grave as well. Who among us hasn't dreamed of living out our days in such 1920s-style opulence with stunning ocean views and distinctive Mediterranean revival-style architecture? It seems that some souls have decided to fulfill that dream in the afterlife as permanent residents of hotels such as the nearby Vinoy, Don Cesar, and the Fenway Hotel, which we are approaching up and ahead on your left. When the Grand Lady of Dunedin opened her doors in 1927, she was a jazz age marvel. Many well-known politicians, musicians, and other celebrities have been guests. And since the hotel was built during the Prohibition years, it included a speakeasy in the basement. This operation also likely supplied those bottles for late-night fishermen to pluck from the water of Stevenson's Creek. Some claim they've still heard the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses coming from empty rooms on the lower floor. Never mind that Prohibition was repealed in 1933 and the basement speakeasy closed long ago. Today, it seems, you might find spirits of a different sort there. The Fenway was also the site of Pinellas County's first radio station. Some paranormal investigators have picked up strange electrical interference, including static on their videos, batteries that suddenly lose their charges, and unusual voices in EVP sessions. Is it possible that someone or something is still trying to broadcast on a frequency we're not attuned to? For many years, starting as far back as the 1930s, guests at the hotel have complained about the sound of a child's footsteps running through the halls late at night. People also reported hearing a young boy's laughter coming from around corners and down stairwells. But those who search for the boy always fail to find him. It is likely to be the ghost of 3-year-old Billy Kaminsky, who drowned at the marina just up the street. In 2014, the Taoist Tai Chi Society acquired the property as its new national headquarters, making the building a place to harness a different form of energy. More recently, in 2018, Mainsail Lodging and Development bought the hotel and reopened it that same year. Whether visiting for cocktails and live music, or for an extended stay, visitors find this storied old hotel to be hauntingly beautiful. This is also an opportune time to quickly chat about the legends of the mermaid and the siren. Legends of these creatures in the area stretch back at least to the arrival of European explorers more than 500 years ago. Even Columbus thought he had encountered them on his voyage, although more likely what he saw were manatees. All the same, mermaids have made themselves at home in Florida. Whether it's those that perform at Weeki Wachee or those animated by Disney, they are generally depicted as playful and benevolent sea creatures. The half-human, half-bird mythological creatures known as sirens, on the other hand, have a very different temperament. Ancient Greek sailors described them as beautiful women with angelic voices that lure ships off their course with promises of unimaginable wealth. So enticing were their songs that these sailors would tie themselves down to avoid being overcome. Those who heeded the siren's call would discover only too late that they had crashed their ships into jagged reefs, at which point the sirens would reveal their true form as predatory monsters and feast on the broken bones and bodies of their victims. So, next time you think you have spotted a mermaid, just make sure that she's not a siren, preparing to feast on your bones.
All right, so Dave, what was your favorite part of being a part of this tour?
I believe it's the history of it. I love history, and there's so much history involved in all this. And the biggest part is watching people have fun, enjoying the stories, enjoying the time. And when they get off and they tell you thank you and you've enjoyed it, it means a lot to you because we are bringing entertainment.
Yes, you guys are.
Not only good times, but entertainment.
Definitely.
Yes.
Well, thank you for having us out tonight.
Thank you for riding with me. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed yourselves.
Absolutely. All right, guys, it's been a great time here with the Jolley Trolley. You guys want to learn more about it, go to hauntedclearwater.com. And just want to wish you all a happy Halloween, and thank you so much for the Jolley Trolley team for having us out tonight. Have a great Halloween. Tampa Bay Steve, out.